Because once they're behind their desks, it's business. Once it's their money, not entertainment, but investment, it's business. So I didn't realize that I crossed some threshold, some boundary of my relationship, and now, okay, come at me, stand on business. And I was not ready for 5 minutes, go.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we have illuminating conversations with people who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, we're here with our guest, Michael DeLucca. He's an Army veteran and multiple-time founder of tech companies, including his latest, Ötsy, and he's going to tell us all about it today. Thanks for joining us today, Mike.
I appreciate you having me on.
It's been my pleasure. So before we get into the companies, before we get into the entrepreneurship, I know you grew up not far from where I grew up in Connecticut. So Give us a little bit of your background. How did you go from kid growing up in Connecticut to what you're doing today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in New Haven, Connecticut, right down the street from Yale. And I'd say we're most well known for our pizza. And Dave Portnoy would agree that New Haven, Connecticut, specifically Sally's, has the best pizza in the United States.
Absolutely no argument here.
Yeah.
And also, controversial topic, but where the hamburger was invented as well.
That's correct. That's also correct, yes. So my father was a VP at Starter Corporation. So Starter made hats and jackets. They were actually the first company to produce authentic sideline gear. So you would be the first it was the first company that built basically the idea that you could wear what the players wear. So Starter eventually went into bankruptcy and then was sold the rights to Walmart. But before all that happened, my father had an opportunity to move to Florida, the Panhandle of Florida, which he had told me at the time we were moving to L.A. And I was super excited till I found out that L.A. meant Lower Alabama.
Been there many times.
Yeah. So it ended up being an amazing experience. So at 16, I moved to Florida, and my father went on his entrepreneurial journey, right? So he took equity ownership in a company called Adams Fashion Headwear. They make resort hats that are all over the world. You'll notice them by they have a leather strap with a brass buckle on the back, and it has an Eiffel Tower on it. But like yachting and resorts and hotels carry them globally. So that was sort of my taste into entrepreneurship, and growing up there, it sort of like was a slower paced beach community. Very small town at the time. It's growing now. It was, Destin, Florida. I went to Niceville Senior High School. It was very nice. It was lovely. And that was also my first introduction into like being a part of like Southern football community. You couldn't pay people to come to the football games in Connecticut.
No, you can barely get people to go to the high school basketball games in Connecticut. But if you're going to get them to go to anything in Connecticut, it's going to be the high school basketball games.
Right. And then obviously UConn, University of Connecticut, amazing basketball. But it was Friday night lights in the Panhandle of Florida, where 6,000 people would turn out to a Friday night high school football game. So it was amazing growing up there, and it was a transition of I wasn't the best student in high school, and my dad sat me down one day because this was sort of like the inflection of his point in his career that he had some nicer vehicles. We had a BMW 528i, and he had a boat in a marina down and he said, "Listen, these are my things. What are you gonna do to get your things?" And he sat me down, and it was really a pivotal moment in my career because he showed me the bills, and he said, "What jobs are you gonna go get to be able to pay for all these things if you want to further the generation? I did better than my father. He did better than his father. My expectation is you do better than me." And when I saw the numbers on a piece of paper, I realized the retail job that I was working at the time was simply not going to cut it.
What was your retail job? Where were you working?
I worked at Nike, and then I worked at Banana Republic as a greeter.
I don't see you as a Banana Republic kind of guy.
Yeah.
Has there been a transition
Yeah.
over the years?
You know, I was actually a horrible Banana Republic employee because I didn't even wear their clothing. So I would sit at the front, and people would be like, "Oh, I love your jeans. Where are they from?" I was like, "Oh, I'm wearing Tommy Hilfiger." And eventually, they were like, "Listen, I don't think this is the job for you." So that was my introduction into work environment. But I was rarely able to follow the rules of any job I've had outside of the military that made you follow the rules.
You have one choice in the military. It's follow the rules, or you can't wear this uniform anymore. So.
Right, exactly. So when there was a lot of structure and a lot of routine, I sort of fell into place. But it was when I was doing something that felt like it wasn't purposeful, and it wasn't like bettering anything, and I was just doing it just to receive a paycheck because you have to pay bills and live. That's sort of where I was like, this isn't for me. And from that point forward, I went to college at Florida State. And I started my first business, which was called Clean Stream. And I went out and bought a pressure washer, and I went to all the apartment complexes, and I, got contracts to pressure wash. Obviously in Florida, we get that black mold all over the sidewalk, so they need to be pressure washed every sort of quarter. So that was my first business, and when I graduated, I sold it to my business partner. Very tiny exit.
Your first exit.
My first exit, yeah. And then I took a job with a company called Great Places Apparel. And they were in Destin, Florida. And they were in the outdoor industry, resort industry. And what it was basically, it was a brand called Great Places. But then they would name drop the location of like wherever it was. Cape Canaveral, Key West, Isla Mirada, right? And so we came out to Vegas for the very first time, my first time in Vegas at the convention center just down the street from here. So we're in the Sterling Club right now. And across the street is the Westgate, and attached to that is the convention center. So that was my very first time. It was in July. It was hot. And I walked into a show. It was called iCast. And it was all outdoor stuff like kayaks, boats, fishing reels, rods and reels. Like, just think of like a REI and a Bass Pro Shop combined. And for an outdoors guy, this was like heaven. And so while I'm there in the show, I'm sort of this new thing came out, and it was called dropship. And so prior to that, if you wanted to sell any of these products, you'd have to warehouse them and buy like a minimum order of things. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting, but there was no entrepreneurship yet. I was just trying to cut deals to buy the show stuff really cheap. Like, hey, you don't really want to bring that kayak back home, do you? Mm-hmm. We've got to go. I'll give you $100. Give me the kayak. So we were sticking it all in our pallets. So I had bought a bunch of stuff, a kayak and a seagull boat and some fishing rods. And I got on the tarmac, and I went back home, and that was sort of the first, as I was using these products, being like, I should sell this stuff. And I called up a buddy, and they knew how to build websites, and that was the entrepreneurial journey start, where I built my first marketplace called Inland Gear. And we were sort of a dropship website for all things outdoors. I didn't have to carry any inventory. The order came in on our site, and it sent straight to the manufacturer. The manufacturer sent it to the customer, and I collected our fee for that, doing that.
So for all you folks who are doing drop shipping now, you're welcome. Mike paved the way for you.
I did, yeah.
And that trip to Vegas, your very first trip to Vegas, kind of paved a lifelong love affair for you with Las Vegas. And you've had a number of companies.
I have, yeah.
But the one I want to talk about right now is the one that came out of that lifelong love affair of Vegas, which is Red Carpet VIP.
Yes.
Tell us about Red Carpet VIP, how it got started, how your love of Las Vegas got that started.
Yeah, so at the time, I had not known that I would be moving to Vegas, but I fell in love with it. And kind of anytime you go somewhere and you kind of see how locals live, and you have an opportunity to have boots on the ground, you're going to say, well, what would it take to move there and live there? And I really loved hospitality. So after I exited out of Inland Gear, I moved to Vegas, and I sort of tried to get my bearings. And it's actually an interesting story how I ended up with Red Carpet. I connected with a buddy of mine. His name was Neil Mant, and another friend. His name's Rob Gaddy of 702 Productions. So Rob Gaddy was fresh off of making the TV show Rehab. So that was coming and wrapping to an end at the Hard Rock. And so Neil Mant is a Hollywood producer. He owns Mant Brothers Productions, produces the ESPY Awards. So I called them both up and I said, hey, I think there's something here to make a reality show about bottle service and VIP service and concierge here in Las Vegas. And they were like, you know what? I think you're right. So I called up all the best VIP companies. And at the time it was VIP in Vegas. It was Red Carpet VIP. There was 702 VIP. And I interviewed them all. And I brought out a production team and we tried to make a pilot. And I got to know the Red Carpet guys during the pilot. And my intention was to go back to Florida. But in getting to know them, I was like, this is kind of a cool place because I now had been here for like 3 months making a pilot, doing the interviews, and then trying to sell the pilot. Now, we were ultimately not able to get the rights to film inside the casinos, and sort of the companies like Bravo and Travel Channel, they were more interested in behind the scenes at the casinos. And this is like the real world kind of like just was ending. And they were like, we don't want another real world going on. So we weren't able to get those rights. So I actually became friends with the owner of Red Carpet, the 3 owners at the time, and they were like, hey, like, you could go out and like host for us. And I was like, well, that's an interesting way to go out and meet people. So I went out as a host, making $100 a night, working for Red Carpet. So I was an employee at the time. And then I sort of went out and spread my wings. And I in 2017, I came back and bought the company. So I went from employee, making $100 a night as a host, walking people into nightclubs for tips, to coming back and purchasing the whole business. And so that's like the Vegas dream, but also the American dream.
Yeah,
I would say.
what's the saying? You remember this from growing up in New England, right? I liked it so much I bought the company, right?
Right. And so that was sort of this idea of the company was really coming from being in an analog place and not really understanding the internet in a big way. I mean, they were doing $7-8 million a year in revenue on a spreadsheet, and but they were really great salesmen. And so I wanted to be able to take the company global and bring it more into an internet presence and run digital marketing and influencer campaigns, et cetera, that were all becoming available. So, and so that sort of was my journey from 2017 on to growing that company to be over 100 million in revenue we've done.
Yeah, you sure grew it to where you wanted to grow it to, and then some, right?
We did, and we moved into multiple other cities and sort of pivoted into high net worth individuals and corporate travel. And that's where we really found that stride, is when we moved into working with corporations.
Yep.
And that grew really strong, lasting relationships here in Vegas, with the top casino hosts to the executive level management and teams of the different casinos. And then I got more into Vegas politics and sort of meeting our constituents and our regents and our economic growth developers. And so I pivoted into also helping build the community here in Vegas.
Yeah, so you had a lot of success with Red Carpet VIP, both personally, but also bringing that company to be a huge success and serving your customers really well.
Right.
And then you took a little break for a little bit, right?
I did, yeah.
And then, so tell us how that break led to your latest venture, Ötsy, and then what Ötsy is and all that.
Sure. Yeah, so the break was it was interesting. I go down rabbit holes a lot. And so the year before, and like I have friends that are like, what are you doing watching this stuff? Like, because I'll get into people's YouTube channels and watch it like it's a critically acclaimed television show.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube.
There is. So
watch the leader's mindset on YouTube.
Yeah. So I went down the rabbit hole of RV life, and I don't know what was so fascinating about it, but as every piece of my life has always scaled, I always then became fascinated with simpler life. Like, what is it like to now not let my mind run wild, but like live a more simple life. And so I was fascinated by these families that were selling their homes, moving into an RV, and traveling the United States. So in 2019, I was just really down the rabbit hole on RVs. And 2020 rolls around, January, February 2020. My birthday is in February. So I said, you know what? For my birthday, I'm going to buy an RV. So I went up to the National Indoor RV Center here in Las Vegas, and they happened to have the model randomly. It was a 1-year-old used RV. The exact model that I was looking for, they had it, and it was very rare. There's only a few of these models in the country, and it happened to be right down the road. So I went there, and I made an offer on it, but it was already under contract to someone else. And I was like, oh, this is not meant to be. So 2 weeks later, the RV company comes back and said, hey, listen. So they're really hard to get financed because, as you can imagine,
it's like buying a house on wheels. It's not like buying a car.
Yeah, it's really hard to repossess it when you can live in it and drive it away.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the banks are very particular in loaning on these vehicles because I guess some people have decided to buy very expensive ones and just drive them away to Mexico and they're just gone. Right. Definitely don't do that.
Yeah,
don't drive your RV to Mexico
don't
and
do
not
that.
make your payments. So from that point, I ended up, I was like, okay, this is serendipitous. I buy it. I close on it the first week of March 2020. And as
talk about timing.
Talk about timing. And by March 13th, 14th, almost a year ago, 5 years ago today, I was faced with one of the most hardest and complicated decisions of my career was, what do I do with my business that's in tourism? And the state had just mandated that we all shut down for 2 weeks. So now I have this RV, but now I'm actually not thinking it's very serendipitous that I purchased it. I'm like, wow, I just spent a lot of money on something and the world is turning upside down. I wish I hadn't bought it. Probably need cash at this point. And so I was faced with a decision to sort of lay off the staff as sales were turning to zero and refunds were going back to customers. It was a really challenging time because I couldn't cut fast enough to sort of slow down the burn of what I would be personally responsible to keep paying for however long COVID was going to last for. And as you can remember, in the early stages, it was very scary and very shocking. And it was even more shocking because I live in a condo here and I have a view of the strip. And when they shut the lights off to the strip of Las Vegas, it was the eeriest thing I think I've ever seen.
It was hard to watch as locals. It was hard to watch the lights go out in Vegas.
It was. So I was like, okay, well, I have this RV. I ended up temporarily laying off some team members. I kept our development team because I said, well, I know it's not forever, so I should continue to let's reassess our own marketing, website, sales funnels, all these things. So I kept all that and I said, let's rebuild it all. Let's focus internally on ourselves and let's rebuild for when it opens. So I've never driven an RV. It's a 40-foot RV, and I connected at the time my Tahoe. I had to flat tow it, all 4 tires on the ground. And this thing's as big as a semi truck. Like, you probably should need some type of special licensing, but you don't. So I hit the road in this thing. It's the scariest thing when you first drive. I mean, just white knuckling, like you're driving this huge thing. The window is, massive because it's the bus style. So like the wind hits it and it's like you're just driving and all of a sudden it gets hit by a gust of wind and it just feels like you're going to fly off the side of the road.
Yeah, I've got enough trouble with my Jeep with getting a gust of wind.
Yeah, it was, you get comfortable over time, but it's a very, very scary thing to drive at first. And so I decided I was going to hit the road. And I ended up going on a 17-state RV experience and stopped in all these small, and sometimes I was the only person on the road. And in fact, I have a picture somewhere where I filled up in Oklahoma regular unleaded gasoline for 79 cents. And it was really an interesting time because I hundreds of miles of stretch of highway and side roads where I'm the only guy out there outside of maybe semi trucks. So it was interesting seeing the world also from the perspective of it just being shut down. So as we kind of set into a normalcy of COVID, um, I was like, okay, well, I want to start planning my own vacations. So here I am, I'm on social media now more than what I normally would be on social media because there wasn't a lot to do. And I was getting fed all this beautiful content of Iceland and Tulum and Maldives. And so I decided, you know what, I should take an Iceland trip when the world reopens. So I'm on Instagram and I'm saving all this content and waiting for sort of the world to reopen so I could take a vacation. And eventually July hits and I decided, okay, it's time to go back and reopen the offices and get everything rocking and rolling again. So we were in the Keys at the time. We drove all the way back to Vegas. So it took over a week to get back of driving, maybe 10 days. And so in the midst of that, I was really thinking how do I scale what I do with Red Carpet? Because this was sort of a company that traditionally had been recession proof. People will always come, conferences will always take place. We're the hospitality and conference capital of the United States. And this was the first time that a business that I thought was indestructible became very humbling indestructible. And luckily, travel came back with a vengeance. And the conventions all came back, and we pulled out of that and had record-breaking years. But in the midst of that, I knew that I needed to be more global, and I knew that I needed to be able to build something that wasn't one-to-one, where I speak to a customer, I work with that customer one-on-one or one of our sales members, and then we sell them an experience. I wanted to be able to build something that people can sell to each other in a marketplace and that could be purchased overnight and while I sleep. And that led me down the path of sort of discovering Ötsy, which stands for Organized Trips and Share Yours. But it became a large social travel platform. And the social aspect of it was built by the saving of my own travel and then going back to Instagram and then being like, okay, I saved all this amazing travel content from these amazing travel creators, but I'm having to DM them because there's no location. There's no details on the booking. There's no type of room that they booked.
Yeah,
there's
no
price.
How do I take this trip?
Right. There's this discovery and this imagination that's happening, but there's no executable. So I still have to go be a detective. I have to go on and look up TripAdvisor reviews, and I have to find the lowest price and do all the research myself. And so I thought to myself, why don't I bridge this gap? Why don't I allow these creators I'll build the OTA, the online travel organization. We'll go into experiences first because I think the trip funnel is inverting on itself and travelers are really traveling for the experience and then backfilling, where do I stay? How do I get there? And I believe the hotels and flights are sort of a race to the bottom in expensive travel, right? But experiences, I think, is where the future is going of I'm going to travel for that Instagrammable moment, that waterfall picture that I want to get, that disconnection, like you see the Tulum where everybody goes, that same gym jungle workout. So there's all these places all over, and they're getting wildly popular. As a study that I read, 84% of millennials and Gen Z are planning their vacations based on someone's social posts.
I got signed up for Ötsy, and I've already got a bunch of stuff that I'm looking at doing. It's really beautiful. You guys should check out Ötsy, get the app, check it out if you love to travel.
Yeah, and it's available in the Android and App Store. And so the idea is let's monetize this content for the creators. So bring it over to my platform, and when you upload your content, you actually can search and attach it to the specific experience that it is, whether it's a balloon tour, machine gun shooting, dune buggies, wine tasting tours. We have over 350,000 adventures to take in over 170 countries. And so by attaching your content to the specific experience, it feeds the live API booking data, the price, right into the video, making it one-click bookable, no loss for conversions. And now I'm getting eyeballs and creating a whole new means of distribution for hundreds of thousands of small businesses all over the both the United States and globally.
Yeah.
And making it a better booking experience.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's really, really great. I haven't booked one yet, but I have a bunch that I'm looking at, and it's one of my favorite things to do is just pull open Ötsy and take a look at what's going on. So
yeah, and that's the idea, is keeping it travel related, but also using advanced machine learning, using AI to spin up categories and to build a TikTok style for you feed and discovery page that I'm connecting you to like-minded travelers on over 100,000 data points. Because, so I call Ötsy the review killer, because reviews are great, but it's the only thing we have to work with right now. So even if they weren't manipulated or they weren't purchased or any of the other things that could be going on that makes them a little bit nefarious, let's pretend that that's not the case. There's still a $1 billion problem that hasn't been solved. So if you look at what Google is a relevancy model, a search model for relevancy. So the idea is that you search something and based on probability and relevancy, Google returns you results that are most meaningful for you. And so how does that happen with reviews? It doesn't. There's 200-300 reviews from everyone's perceived experience, from everyone's lived experiences. And then it becomes, who's like me? Because if I'm traveling with 2 young kids, it's a different trip. You and I are on a golf trip, different trip. Work trip, different trip. Kids that are adults, different trip, right? Bachelorette party, different trip. Honeymoon, very different trip. So I want to connect you to people that are like you at every stage of your life. And then also distill down under what's affordable. Well, affordable means different things to different people. So let's connect you to people like you at every stage of your life, and let's figure out what's affordable, what's adventurous, right? Because adventure, you might jump out of a plane, I may not. I might think adventure is as taking a level tier 1 hike. You might be on some kind of switchback on the side of a mountain that I'm not going to do, right? So adventure is so different, but travel companies today are just making it a category, tagging experiences and throwing it all in a bin and giving everyone the same experience.
So Ötsy's changing the way we all travel, and you are an experienced founder. You're an experienced tech guy. You've done this with a number of companies. Were there any challenges with Ötsy that you didn't anticipate, that challenged you even as an experienced entrepreneur and experienced tech guy?
Yeah, I mean, so entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. That's what I always start with. It's a long, treacherous journey. If you're exited and if you founded other things, there's sort of some things that help. I would say fast pass, but you're not fast passing everything. You are in the very early stages, probably going to receive your first investment round based upon the fact that you've executed before. But you still need to learn how to pitch, and you need to learn the language of money. And so even though I was an exited founder, I always had 1 or 2 business partners, and I built up a business, and it wasn't one that went and raised venture capital. And so I was able to build lucrative businesses that made ROI and get a multiplier on my sale of my free cash flow or revenue, right? And so now I had to learn how to go out and pitch hundreds of investors. And I thought it was going to be really easy because I did over 100 million in revenue. Surely everyone's going to want to be involved in what I'm building.
Surely every investor will want to line up to hand me money.
Right. And so I pitched 100 times to friends, family, random people, and I was told no 100 times. And everyone applauds me for putting in my own capital. But in the first million that I put in was like, oh, you know what? You don't believe in what I'm doing? I'll show you. I'll invest myself. But then I realized, if I want to build something really big, I need other people to come along on this journey. It's going to get past the point where now I'm just an exited founder, putting in my own capital, but still not showing that anyone else believes in what I'm doing. So I hired a CEO coach. I spent 90 days recording all the Zooms of all the pitches, because most of them were on Zoom, and sending them to the CEO coach. And we would do deep work. And they're like, listen, you're pitching the same thing the same way. You're not asking enough questions. You're not allowing them to be inspired. So now it would be more like, hey, when was the last vacation you took? How did you end up choosing that location? Who does the planning? Is it the wife? Is it you? Do you normally take the kids? And now I'm get them talking about their experience. And then I say, hey, look, I want to show you what I've built. And the pitch became very different because they were already describing the problem to me. And now I'm creating a solution. And I want to talk about that in a minute because a VC once taught me this, and it was very life-changing. Come from a position of demand, not from supply. A solution is supply. A problem is demand.
Fall in love with the problem, right?
Right. So that distinction and separation was magical to figure out that if I can get the investor to understand the problem by just having a conversation before I've told him it, he's already there. Now I'm just showing that I built a bridge for him and I bridged this gap. And now, okay, so there is a problem. I see the problem. I have the problem. It's a lot easier to have someone come on a journey with you if they also experience the problem that I'm suggesting that exists in the marketplace without suggesting it, by just asking questions. One would call those leading questions, maybe not allowed in a courtroom, perfectly allowable in an investment pitch.
Yeah. Aspiring founders, this is your masterclass on getting yourself ready to pitch investors.
Right. And so then it was learning the language of money, but then also learning that the same way my app is connecting people at all different levels at different times of their lives, I had to learn that every investor is different and the values of every investor was different. And so some of them were totally bought in as avid travelers, but then just didn't understand the investment vehicle. So, but also in the very beginning, I didn't really understand the investment vehicle. You know, when someone starts asking you, let's say about like a safe, it's a simple agreement for future equity. And so the investor's like, okay, well, how much percent of the company do I get? And we were like, well, you're not really getting a percentage of the company right now. You're kind of investing in this safe that is one day going to convert to something. Yep. Well, how much does it convert to? Well, we don't know because we have to have a qualified round. Well, how is your company worth 10 million, 20 million, 30 million?
And more importantly, how does it make me money?
Right.
If no one understands this vehicle.
Right. And so these questions started to arise and you start to realize, well, I don't know the answers to these things. So should I even be taking someone's money? So I sort of, at that point, after that CEO coach, now I'm making connections, but I'm now having to learn the language of money and learning the language of the investment vehicles that I'm asking someone to invest in with me. And so that led me down probably about a 6-month to year-long journey of studying cap tables, conversions, dilution, and the investment vehicle itself and how it works, how it triggers, and how I can explain to someone, this is what this is, and then get them to these high tech valuation numbers. And what the difference of a value cap is and a valuation. Because we'll also hear that sometimes interchangeable.
Yeah,
but
they're not the same.
They're not the same at all. Literally not the same at all. And so that's been, a journey of sort of understanding that process and then getting someone to say, okay, because these are people that are everyday angels, angel investors, just someone who can write you a check that's been successful in their career, not indicative of someone that's maybe investing in tech. And they have a regular business. And they're probably doing a couple $1 million a year, if not more. Maybe they're doing $20 million a year. And they have very successful businesses. They have very big homes, and they're living wonderful lifestyles. And you're coming in there saying that your company, that you sort of wrote some stuff down on a napkin and put pretty pictures in a PowerPoint presentation, is worth more than theirs. And that's a tough thing to get someone to who's a traditional business owner. If you really don't understand how the investment vehicle works, the time horizons on them, and then being able to show how it goes from 10 million to 100 million to a unicorn, maybe a billion. And so that was the first set of iteration of my career in raising capital, was really understanding, number one, how capital works. What are they looking for? How do they make money? Unit economics, things that you and I have talked about in the past, the TAM, the SAM, the SOM. You'll hear those words all the time, but often founders will,
it's the fundamentals, right? It's because I'm an engineer by background, the way I explain this to people, math is to engineering like skating is to hockey. It's the same thing with the understanding the financials, understanding the foundation of raising money, right? If you don't skate well in hockey, you're always going to struggle to play hockey. Skating has to be like breathing if you're going to be a really good hockey player.
Yeah, very complicated sport.
It's the same thing whether you're talking about math to engineering or understanding these kinds of fundamentals to raising money.
Right.
And not only have you gained all this experience because you wanted to be successful at raising money, but you're also investing now.
I am.
What do you look for in a venture that gets you interested in writing a check, besides understanding the founders understanding the money this way? Right.
So it's one, when we were talking about like entrepreneurship is really hard, right? So the first sort of, and this is actually an interesting story that led me to, once I invested, understand this process. So I had gotten a meeting, and it was in, I always had this idea I wanted to build a tech platform. It didn't mature into Ötsy until 2021. So in 2019, at the end of 2019, maybe it was August, maybe October, I got a meeting, and it was a totally different platform at the time, where the idea was at. So understand that things iterate and they only get better. But I got a meeting with a really wealthy individual. He's a billionaire, and his offices are in Manhattan, and he's like, sure, fly up and tell me what you're doing. So he's a customer of Red Carpet. This is my first time, let me reach out to some of my customers that love the experience, so understand that I'm a great entrepreneur, and let me see if I can get them to be involved in something that can hyperscale. So I fly up there, and unbeknownst to me, he's in Midtown. I stay downtown because I'm trying to keep it cheap, and so I take a cheap hotel. And in the morning of the meeting, the hotel fire alarms are going off. There's some kind of sprinkler flood, and so none of the elevators work. So I'm on the 28th floor of this hotel, and so I'm just running down the stairs to get to a Uber.
It's literally like rats from a sinking ship at this point, right?
It is. And as I hit certain floors, there was water buildup. So my shoes are soaking wet up to my ankles, and I'm just sloshing. So I get in the Uber, and the Uber can't even get me all the way there because the traffic is so bad. So I'm coming in 10 minutes late now to this meeting. I'm hustling down the road. I come in, and it's a beautiful office in Midtown Manhattan, and it overlooks Central Park. So I get in there. They have me waiting for 45 minutes. So I'm sitting there in my own thoughts, and finally his assistant comes out. Now, mind you, this is someone I have a relationship with, not a super close relationship, but uses my other company as a service.
You're not strangers, and that's kind of the important part of this story, right?
Right. And so we're not strangers at all. So, and this is my naivete, right? I'm being naive about that. I'm gonna just have an unlimited conversation, and he's gonna ask me a lot of great questions, and we're gonna, cheers some drinks or whatever. So the assistant brings me in there, and I'm sitting on the other side of his desk, and I'm looking out at Central Park, and it's beautiful office space, places that, you know, they're making in the movies billions, you know. And so this is my Bobby Axelrod from Billions, right? And I sit down, and he goes, looks at his watch. He goes, 5 minutes, go. And I flew all the way to New York.
Now, understand, aspiring founders, this is a person you had a pre-existing relationship with, a good professional relationship with, and
Yes.
it was still 5 minutes go.
Yep. Because once they're behind their desks, it's business. Once it's their money, not entertainment, but investment, it's business. So I didn't realize that I crossed some threshold, some boundary of my relationship, and now, okay, come at me, stand on business. And I was not ready for 5 minutes go.
You thought you were going to chat.
I thought we were going to chat. I wasn't ready for that at all. I had not prepared for that. That is something that's very difficult to do, to say more with less. Like, one of the hardest things to do. I'm a long format guy. While we're having a long format discussion.
And we appreciate you taking the time to do that with us.
So I enjoy long format and conversation, but I wasn't ready for a traditional pitch. And so I'm now in my head. I blow the meeting, by the way. And I'm in my head, and I'm thinking, how can this gentleman sum up everything I want to do and all the purpose of what I'm building in 5 minutes? And I'm really down and depressed and upset about this. To the fact that he actually was randomly coming back to Vegas the next day. So the next day he texts me, he goes, hey, I'm going back to Vegas. You want to come on my G6? We're leaving at noon.
And that's my favorite part of this story, right? This was someone you had a previous relationship with, a good working relationship with, very cordial, went and did a pitch. It didn't go well, and still was gracious enough. He was gracious enough afterwards to say, hey, I'm going back to Vegas. You want to ride on my jet?
Right. And I was so upset and in my own head about that like I didn't take that trip back with him. I flew commercially back to Vegas.
Well, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I probably wouldn't have recognized the graciousness that I just would have been in my head as well.
Well, he had he switched. He went back from standing on business to then our relationship. The business part was over. But to me, it wasn't over. But for him, it was just over. Now we're just back to being friends or associates or whatever it is, or client, relationship. So he wasn't feeling any type of way. He's like, come on the jet, go back. And maybe I would have had more time with him on the jet, but also like maybe it would have been inappropriate to bring it back up again. So, and so I still had a little bit of that ego, which I think you need to kill, and bury very deep, because you can't have it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the point of this story, right? Is the folks who do this day in, day out. It's the pitch is the pitch. The pitch stands on its own, and the result is the result. And then we go back to our lives, right?
Right.
And we need to kill that ego, whether you're pitching an investor for investment, or you're pitching a potential client to do some work for them, or whatever it is. We've all got to learn to kill that ego and go, okay, that didn't go great, but it doesn't mean I can't have a good relationship with this person and we can't move on to something else.
Right. And so I think the thing about me is that I'm only going to make the mistake once, right? And so I'm not going to allow myself to I'll give myself what I call a grieving period, but it's very short. And in fact, every day in my life is a new day. Like a light switch, that sun goes down. Like a light switch, the sun comes up. And I will not allow whatever happened the previous day to affect the next day.
Yep. We learn the lessons and we move on, right?
We learn the lessons and move on. And maybe that's some of the military, right? Or, I mean, I'm terrible at golf, but I guess that's a lesson of golf as well. It's like
I think that's the
short-term memory.
That's the whole point of golf, right?
Right.
We're all terrible at it, but when we go out and play, we hit that one shot that keeps us coming back.
Right. And so you just got to forget about whatever happened that last hole and move on. And so I tried to take that experience. Now, I didn't fully learn from it, but I did start to really analyze my deck and shorten things down and start to develop a pitch. And then I go on YouTube and watch all the best Y Combinator pitches and TechCrunch pitches. And so I went down that rabbit hole. And but it wasn't until I built Scared to Scale. So I went to Miami and I raised $3 million. I raised a friends and family round, and I raised a pre-seed round in Miami because I didn't think that Vegas had a flourishing ecosystem at the time to bring in that level of capital. So Miami, you can go to these tech meetups and mixers, and then you can invite someone for coffee, and then you could raise a $100,000 check. And I did that a bunch of times. And so after the CEO coaching, after that experience, after now sort of finalizing the deck to say a lot less. I mean, my deck was like a paragraph of these problems with all these different complex problems that I was solving. Like it looked like a dossier, like my manifesto versus like problem, solution, differentiator, competitor.
You've got a book for each item, and what you really need is a picture for each item.
Exactly. So it was like, what am I really doing? Okay, well, what at the heart, travel content is abundant on social media and it's not bookable. What do? We make it bookable. It's not hard, right? But it was like the first iterations of the deck were like atrocious and in paragraphs. And so to be able to say less, but say way more with less is the name of the game in those short form pitches. I have to say what I'm doing, and someone has to say, aha, within 30, 40 seconds. And so when I came back to Vegas, I said, man, I wish this stuff existed in Vegas. Maybe, so what I was experiencing in Miami, I was getting real estate investors. I was getting, doctors, nurses to write me checks into Ötsy. So this was their first tech investment. So now that I was understanding the instrument, I had a good deck. I had a good pitch. Now I was like, okay, I'm able to convert these everyday people into tech investors. I wonder if I could do that in Vegas.
And I do want to talk about Scared to Scale.
Yeah.
But first I want to play a game with you.
Sure.
You up for a game?
Yeah, always.
Okay. All right. Name of this game is Rapid Response.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a series of questions. I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Doesn't
I
have to
no
be,
filter.
That's okay. It doesn't have to be a one-word answer. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like to. But we want to get the first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Sure.
You ready to start?
Yep.
All right. Michael DeLucca, Rapid Response Round. Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
Joe Rogan is my favorite podcast.
Okay. A mentor that had an impact on you.
I've had a few that go all the way back from high school to college. High school, a teacher, his name was, he was actually an Army Ranger, previous Army Ranger. His name was, last name Stafford, Keith Stafford. And then once again in college, Professor Jack Chambliss, econ professor. Didn't even know I liked economics. This was the moment in my life where I felt unlocked for the very first time. And he was the quintessential professor in a large classroom of 120 people. Look to the left, look to the right, one of you won't be here. He really made me work hard and get to a level that I never thought I could get to. And then in my profession, couple different people. One was a gentleman named Sean Lampman, who was a real estate investor here. Sean made me understand the level of successful people for the very first time in my career. I could tell you the backstory on that if you want to hear it, but he was the first person that I realized that the people that sort of are the most successful connect the dots the fastest. It's really just understanding that 1 + 1 +, it's like A and B, and like they're just connecting dots very, very, very rapidly. So that was one. Another great mentor that is more recent for me is a gentleman named Peter Tomasic.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Tomasic of TensorWave.
Yeah, I gotta get him on this show.
Yeah, so he's fantastic, and he's on our board, and he's actually younger than me. So it's interesting having someone that I look up to, that I chase, that's younger. But he's blazing trails every which way possible for the Las Vegas tech scene. And every conversation that I have with him, there's always like 2, 3, 4 nuggets that you can extrapolate from him, that you can actually take tomorrow and use and make a more successful product.
Well,
So
now
he's
I
fascinating.
don't have to ask you who we should all be paying attention to.
Yeah, Peter Tomasic. Pay attention to what he's building and what he's accomplishing in the Vegas tech scene for sure.
What is your get pumped up music or your walk on music?
Oh, that's, that like changes all the time. I forget who sings the song, but it's I heard it at the end of Dave Chappelle's documentary, and it was The Man, and it's like, I'm the man, and so
Is that the Killers?
I think it's actually like an R&B or rap song.
Okay.
We'll have to bring it up for the guests and put it there, but it's within the last few years the song's come out, but it's a really motivational song about your career has amounted to you being the man. So I like to look in the mirror and hype yourself up and say, hey, I'm the man. I'm worthy to be here. I'm worthy to be in the room. I have something to say. I have something to share. So I hype up to that. But before that song was actually very interesting. The classical piece called "The Ride of the Valkyrie," and it's a very powerful classical piece.
You guys all know it from the Looney Tunes cartoon.
I used to brush my teeth to "The Ride of the Valkyrie" every morning, sort of preparing to go to battle, as every day being the battle. So that would be like my everyday sort of like going to battle piece, because I really do believe that when you step into your office or in front of your desk, in front of your laptop, you're going to war every day. And that should be the mindset, is win or lose. We're at war every day. But getting on stage or getting hyped up before something, certainly that. And in sports, it would be Metallica, which Kash Patel just came out to Enter Sandman, which is another great one. So those are sort of
always a crowd pleaser.
Always a crowd pleaser. That would be on my headphones before I would go play tennis or get hyped up for that. So those are the 3 different sort of hype songs that I listen to at 3 different stages.
Who's the biggest influence in your life?
Biggest influence, as I mentioned, those mentors have influenced me greatly, but really it's my father. He told me something, that if you're not from generational wealth, it's time to build it. And it's the sacrifice even from my grandparents, who, my grandfather passed before I was 16, so I didn't really have that maturity time to understand like what he really did. But to understand, especially in like the economic and sort of political, I want to say polarizing divide of the United States right now. But my family, we're immigrants from Italy, and to understand that they, living through World War II, having Nazis in your backyard, having to feed them, having to, provide housing, despite it not being your beliefs, right? Because Mussolini made a deal, and having them have the courage to, with like 30, 40 cents or a couple bucks, get on a boat and just come to America with nothing, and all in the pursuit of like, not just that selfishness of, I want to have a better life. You wanted every generation beyond you to have a better life. And so from my grandparents who made that crazy move, and I actually years ago had the opportunity to go to Ellis Island and find their names in the book. And that was so like meaningful. And then for my father to be first to go to college and then providing the advice, he actually often says, we're very different people. So my dad, while I love and respect him and find him to be the greatest influence of who I am, he often would say to me, you know, Michael, why do you ask my advice if you're never going to take it? And because he's, you know, he worked in corporate America and he did make that entrepreneurial switch, but it was already to a successful company. So like, you know, his salary was never at risk. And so when I double down and I take these huge risks, he's sort of like, maybe just chill. Maybe just S&P 500, let it grow. And that's not me.
Where's the fun in that?
Right. Where's the fun in that? Where's the fun to not YOLO, right? You only live once. So, but if I can't overcome my father's objections, knowing that he has my best interest in mind, knowing that he only wants the best for me, and if I can't overcome that objections, I have no business building or doing whatever it is that I want to do. So I do take the advice for a very different purpose. It's an advice of objection that I need to overcome. So he's the first hurdle that I always have to have a business conversation, hear the adversity, and then know that I have something that I can get past with.
Just because we're not taking advice doesn't mean we're not listening to it.
Right, exactly.
What is a book everyone should read?
Well, there's a few of them.
Tell me about them all.
All right. So I love Atomic Habits. I love Atomic Habits because it's the idea that small things that you do every day compound over time to very big things. Okay. So that's very important. And it's to know that you could be over a long period of time very far off from your objective or on target based upon the little things that you're doing every day. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is I think everyone should read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is sort of this idea that things don't always need to move in a linear fashion. So like when you're thinking about like building, it's like, okay, well, I can go from A to B, but sometimes A to B could be A to B vertically. So vertical integration, forgetting everything that you think you know about something, right? And building from ground up on first principle thinking, which is a weird way to look at life, is just forget everything you know, forget physics, forget math, forget, you know, the thing. And then how do I build something from nothing and not do it in a linear fashion, but in a vertical fashion? So 0 to 1, I think, is fantastic. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. You know, obviously sharpening the saw, always learning, always educating yourself. The second habit, I believe, is the second habit, which is a really important one, is never start something without knowing the end. What's the end goal? And it's the same for founders. The end goal can only lead to 2 things. Is a liquidity event. And the liquidity event in terms of IPO or M&A. That's it. That's where it goes. And so and then also, like, everything has a meaning. I'm going to talk in third person, which is going to sound narcissistically for a second. So I often tell my staff, Mike DeLucca doesn't care. The customers care. The investors care. The world cares, right? It's not my personal choice. So if we're not serving the ultimate goal, traction in terms of customer adoption, in terms of user growth, whatever it is, that then brings revenue, that then brings capital. So those 3 things have to be addressed, and you have to serve them. So it's knowing what the end is, and then reverse engineering, okay, well, now how do we do that? So I think a lot of people start and they're just working on stuff, and it's really easy to work an 8-10 hour day as an entrepreneur and have nothing to show for it. Because it is about working a lot of hours, but it's about working on the right things at the right times that serve the thing that matters, right? Which ultimately ends up being traction, revenue, capital, right?
All about a liquidity event, right?
Right, exactly. So that's what I would say.
What is a gap you see in the market that somebody should be taking advantage of?
So that's like a super loaded question, but I'm going to give you.
That's why I asked.
Let's go macro for a second, then. Okay, so let's talk about passive. Everyone loves passive income. So the only thing super passive is making investments into the sort of the stock market. Everything else requires, and those are long-term horizon investments. So everyone looks at, investing in things all to say, oh, I want passive income, but it's like there's active passive and then real passive. And so real passive is throwing money into the stock market in things you believe in that you're going to be in for a long period of time, and you don't really need to be checking on often. So, so the gap that I see is, and it's shocking that it exists. So there's a thing called the fear and greed index, right? And so when people are fearful, which is like things all ultimately seem bad, you should be buying. That's when you want to accumulate. And when things are on the greed portion of the index, you should be selling. So, you look at something, you say, buy low, sell high. Well, that seems really easy to do, but no one does it. So like, if I go to my hairdresser and they're talking to me about Bitcoin, XRP, I'm walking out of that room selling, because it's now hit this critical mass of people are FOMOing in and thinking it's easy money. So the biggest gap that I see is there's signals everywhere. Look for the signals. Make the math. It is not super complicated. It's the avoidance of looking at everything on a macro level and the signals is the biggest gap in the market. And that's whether you should build something, whether you should go work for someone, right? Whether you should be investing, whether you should be stockpiling your cash and saving. All of that is based on market signal, and it's never wrong. It's just whether you're going to look for it or not.
The market can't be wrong. I knew we'd get a good answer from you on that one.
Right.
What is your next vacation spot?
Ooh, so this is a controversial topic for me. I own a travel app, but I don't necessarily love to travel. And so I like, not vacationing, but like immersion into things. So like I'll often go to a place and I'll spend a month there and I'll mimic a local and try to do none of the touristy things. So I think that for me, the next place that I want to immerse myself is going to be in, I think, Scotland.
Oh, fun. Play a little golf.
I love greenery. I love the outdoors. They don't have the most beautiful weather at all times of year, but I think...
Or any times of year.
Yeah. But I think that's been a place that I've wanted to immerse myself and spend some time. So I think that'll be the next trip.
What's a future trend you're excited about?
So specifically in travel, the future trend is, as we were talking about, that trip funnel has been inverted. So people usually were choosing destinations and then choosing their hotels and their flights. I love the fact that the influential and sort of experienced market is like leading the way, and people are discovering versus searching. Anything that values human connection more than a brand selling to you, or artificial intelligence, or the highest ranking Google search result, I get really excited about. So I get excited about things that inspire human connection. So I love the fact that the creator economy even for yourself as a creator, podcasting or creating short form content. I love that creator economy is growing at a very rapid pace, and also the amount of Fortune 500 businesses that are having budgets for sponsorships or market opportunities for creators is increasing at hockey stick growth rates. So I love the fact that we're number one prioritizing human connection in a world where AI and singularity is exploding. And I love that creator economy is continually growing at a very rapid pace.
All right, last one. Your favorite sports team or player?
Okay. So I'm not a huge sports fanatic. I love tennis. All-time favorite player in tennis, if I were to go all the way back to young ages, is Pete Sampras and Agassi. But more recently, over the last sort of couple decades, Roger Federer. What Roger Federer has done for the tennis sport, he's just a magician. So I really love what he's doing.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks for playing our game.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
We got to know Mike DeLucca a little more than we would have from talking about raising money and building businesses. I want to go back to Scared to Scale, though.
Sure.
You got that. You kind of worked out the principles on that in Miami, and you're trying to get things going here in Vegas. So what is it you're trying to accomplish with Scared to Scale here in Vegas? How is it helping our ecosystem? What do you think our ecosystem needs in Las Vegas?
So, number one, again, when we talk back to that demand side of things, supply comes when there's demand. So we have a demand right now for top tier companies, tech startups that are building. We have a demand for having top tier talent. So we need that to happen to create the supply of capital. So I'm number one trying to attract talent to come work for Ötsy. I think it's something that Peter at TensorWave is also trying to do, bring top tier talent to our ecosystem from other states and other universities to come work for us. Two, or build with us. Two would be helping to consistently through internships and speaking engagements and working with the deans of the college, UNLV, to be in perfect alignment of what these students need when they graduate to be Silicon Valley caliber of humans, right? So that's sort of for me, that's where we're at, and getting it to a point where, we're able to attract the talent, have a vibrant ecosystem, and then build and layer into that, getting investment and getting eyes on what we're building. So, and then also through Scared to Scale, both inviting the founders out and then inviting potential real estate investors, lawyers, just sort of angels that have capital, and exposing them to the ability to invest in a tech startup. And I'm investing alongside them in many cases.
Yeah, I think talent is the thing we really need here, and it's great to see someone like you putting the effort in to try to develop the talent, bring the talent in, get the talent talking to each other, which I think is really the biggest problem is nobody's
Right.
talking to each other here, right?
Right.
So, and Scared to Scale is helping us do all of that. So
Absolutely.
you're blowing things up with Ötsy. You've been really successful. I know there's a lot of challenges. What's keeping you up at night?
I'm always kept up at night by the customer experience and adoption, right? Adoption is the name of the game. So it's hyper growth of adoption, trying to build out really great flows of creating a network effect for referral systems. So it's very easy to advertise in a one-to-one fashion. I spend X dollars and I bring this value, which is LTV. So your cost to acquire a customer to the lifetime value of each individual customer. But it's not until it goes one step past that you really are experiencing hypergrowth. And what that means is that you've spent this cost to acquire this customer and their lifetime value, but then this customer has made these recommendations for you. So it's just sort of that network effect needs to take place, and the sort of the spinning of that flywheel. So even though we experience great growth with great metrics, it's still trying to fire off that flywheel to really get a hyper growing network effect, right? So that keeps me up at night, because that's what ultimately is make or break of the things that I'm building.
Not only are you doing all the things you're doing with your business, all the things you're doing to build our ecosystem here, you're also an adjunct professor. So as we wrap things up, what is the one lesson you hope your entrepreneurship students take from you? What is the one lesson you hope our audience takes from you today?
Sure. So I'll back up for a second. So I don't have an adjunct position. I work under the adjunct professor, so I guest lecture on behalf of their classes, and I try to do that monthly. So I'm recurring as a guest lecturer, and I teach startup. And so ultimately, the goal is whether it's the ambassador program that I'm involved in with Vets in Tech, or it's the guest lecturing at Menlo, or it's at UNLV. Or it's the guest lecturing at UNLV. I think it's a situation where, I'm able to inspire one other person to take this journey, to become an entrepreneur, to build something, to go out and get people to believe in them, to create a team, and to build something, and so I'm really heavy on the aspect of, you don't need to go take a 9-to-5 job. You can build things from the ground up.
Mike, thanks for doing this today. We've got so much more we want to talk about. We're going to have you back in a couple months just to see what you're up to, how Ötsy's doing.
Absolutely.
Tell everybody how they can get a hold of Ötsy, how they can use it, and tell everybody where they can get a hold of you to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ötsy, it's otsy.com. So that's our website. But we're also OTSY in the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. You can download it and use it today, tomorrow. Take your next vacation with it. Find me in the app, follow me, and I'd be happy to shoot you all a discount for your first time booking. As well as, I would love for you to stop by Scared to Scale. That's scared2to scale.com, and check us out for our next events.
Yeah, those are fantastic events. I've been to one. I loved it. I can't wait for the next one. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. If you liked what you saw here today, make sure you thank Mike for joining us. Like this, share it with someone who could use it. Leave a comment if you've got something in response to what Mike had to say. If you're on a podcast platform, you can leave us a review. We'd love it if you'd leave us a 5-star review. Again, thank you for joining us today. We love bringing you these conversations with amazing people like Mike. Go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.